We have no members of the public, which is good. And I will now make the standard announcements. There are no planned fire drills, so if the alarm goes off, we'll leave the building in an orderly fashion to the nearest fire exit, which is that one there. There's only the window otherwise. Please use the fire exit through the main doors of the hall or the fire exit in the storeroom, so be the main doors. The fire assembly point is the island in the front of the building at the main entrance. Do not delay the evacuation or to collect belongings. Please do not return to the building until permission to do so by the council staff. Please switch off mobile phones or put them to silent. And please note the meeting will be live streamed, so ensure your microphone is switched on when speaking and you speak clearly into the microphone. As there are no members of the public present, don't worry about that. Now, members have to be reminded what we now have commenced the politically restricted pre-election period. The council and committee meetings can continue to be held during this restricted period, but must not consider any business that could be political, and members must not make any political statements. Now, for the item number one, which is apologies for absence, we've got apologies from Councillor Gooding and Councillor Sharp, and I believe Councillor Sarah Jane Page is substituting, and any other substitutes? No, okay, that's right. Any non-members attending? No? Now, first, item 4 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of January, which you should have all have had copies. Are those minutes agreed? Right, thanks very much. Thank you. Item 5 is declarations of interest. No declarations of interest. Item 6 is the external audit planning report for 2021-2022, which will be presented by Lorenz Catano from Ernst & Young, who will present the report. Thank you very much. Thank you. Welcome.
Hello, good evening, Audit Committee members. It's nice to see you all. I think it's my first time to attend the Audit Committee, and Debbie sends her apologies as she can't attend today because she's on leave. I'm Lawrence Caetano, so I'm the new manager for 21-22 audit, overseeing the audit for 21-22, and I'm here to present the audit plan for 21-22. I know this has been a long should be presented a long time, so apologies for that. So on page 6.6 of the agenda pack, so you can see the overview of the significant and fraud risk and inherent risk. So just wanted to point out that we have not identified any new risks for 21-22, and all the risk remains the same for 21-22 as with 2021 audit. We have our normal fraud risk of misstatements due to fraud and error as identified in ISA 240. In considering how risk of management override may present itself, we concluded that this is primarily through management taking action to override controls and manipulate in-year financial transactions that impact the medium to long-term projected financial position. So a key way of improving the revenue position is through inappropriate capitalization of revenue expenditure. So this is one of our fraud risk as well for this year. We also have inherent risks in relation to the land and building and pension liability evaluation, which is the same in prior in 2021. Because of the balances, materiality of the balances and the estimates involved in these estimates. Our responses to the significant and fraud risk and inherent risk are on pages 6.11 to 6.14 of the pack. On page 6.7, you can see our planning materiality, which is 721K. This is based on 2% of gross expenditure on provision of services. The performance materiality is 75% of that, which is 540K, and any misstatements above 36K, this is the amount that we are reporting to the audit committee, to yourself. This hasn't changed in 2021. So this is the same with 2021. On page 6.9, you can also see the timeline for the audit. So obviously, this is related to 21-22. So we have been unable to meet, this deadline that the DLAC set for the 21-22 audit, which is the 30th of November 2022. But we are working with the council, together with the council, to complete the audit for 21-22. And also maybe I also add that what's the current status on the local government audit. So all backlogs audits for 22-23 and below years have a backstop date of September 2024. So this year, so it means that all audits at for 2023 and below years needs to be completed and concluded at that time. So for Rochford, the impact will be on 21-22. We will complete the audit for 21-22 this year, and the 22-23 will be disclaimed. So this is not different from any other councils um, where we disclaim audit, so that this is in line with the DLAC proposal, so that we can clear the audit backlogs. Um, for 23-24, the proposed backstop date is 31st of May 2025, so next year. So that's the date that currently DLAC is proposing. Okay, we can go back to the pack again. So on page 6.16 and to 6.18, it talks about the value for money. So the work on this is currently ongoing, and one of our area focus is the council's governance arrangements to ensure that it makes informed decisions and properly manages its risk in relation to the appointment of the council's asset development plan partner, and subsequent decision made in relation to ADP and the financial impact of this. So for this, we will provide the commentary on this on the auditor's annual report. Um, we will update the next audit committee meeting on the outcome of our BFM work and our response to the governance risk noted. And we are also planning to bring and present the audit results report for 21-22 on the next committee meeting. Yeah, so I'm happy to take questions.
Councillor Gadsden.
Yes, sorry. Can I just ask, what's called the backlog?
Sorry.
What's caused the backlog?
Also sorry. So the main cause of the backlogs are the capacity of the auditors. We don't have people to do the audits, and also due to the was it like so currently, as you know, the CIFPA just had a consultation on the audit of the valuation for PPE and also the pension. So this also impacts because of a lot of work that the auditors currently needs to do on these areas.
Can I just ask, how much have you increased the capacity to get the work done on time now?
Yeah, so for 23-24, for the new PSA contracts, that's right. So we have the full manpower capacity to do the audits.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I've just got one question to Tim, because he can clear this up. The original backlog were caused by a change from the Audit Commission to the current setup now, where we have providers for audit in the private sector. And as I understood it, at the onset, there was a set of parameters set by government, but then those were changed or they were altered, and this then led to the resilience problem. Is that correct?
Yes, the reasons for the backlog are multiple. And as Lorenzo's pointed out, one is the capacity of the audit firms to conduct the audits, which is true. Another one that some people argue is the abolition of the Audit Commission, but I'm not arguing that tonight. Another one is that the goalposts have moved. So when the regime was set up, so the PSAA acted as the sort of go-between between all councils, public sector bodies, and the audit firms, and managed the procurement of all the contracts and dished out all the contracts to the big accountancy firms to conduct the audits. They did all that. But then what was being audited changed. It became more complicated and more technical. So the audit firms were saying, hang on a minute, that's not what we bid for. And that has created additional problems in the conduct of the actual audits themselves. And as soon as you lose that rhythm of, for a local authority, you prepare and set the budget through the late autumn, winter. You produce your draft accounts in the spring, and then they're audited in the summer, and then you start the process again. That smooths out the workload for the typical finance team, all of which are limited in capacity in local government. But as soon as you upset that, we feel like we're being permanently audited at the moment, and there's never a break. And that overlaps into other pieces of work and undermines the other pieces of work. And then it delays the interaction between the council and the audit firms to get responses backwards and forwards. So all of these reasons will be a factor. I think audit firms underbidding in the original round of the procurement processes, the audit firms submitted bids to say we're going to do audits for this amount of money. Then it proved that they couldn't. Now that may have been because the audits became more complex, or it might just be they wanted to try and get a big share of the market. That could have been a factor as well. They underbid, which meant they were under-resourced, so they couldn't have enough staff to carry out the audits. There are lots and lots of different reasons why we're in this situation, but everyone who's involved in it realises it's a terrible state of affairs because, as Lorenzo said, EY are going to disclaim the 22-23 accounts, which effectively means we won't have them audited. So the public, the general public, our partners, etc., will point to our 22-3 accounts and say, how do we know that they're trustworthy? And we won't, because they won't have been externally audited. It's as simple as that. And then the opening balances for 23-24 accounts will be based on the closing balances in 22-3, which haven't been audited. It takes another 2 years before you get to the point where the auditors will say, you've got clean accounts again. It won't be until 25-26 before we're back to a clean set of accounts. That is through no fault of the council. No fault of the council at all. We're just in this situation. The only sucker in all of this is that we are one of hundreds of other local authorities that are in exactly the same position, if not in a worse position, because they have even more accounts still outstanding to be audited. Sorry, that was a long answer, Chair, to your question.
Yeah, thank you. So it'd be fair to say we're in the average sort of run, as it were, of this. We're not at the top, the bottom. We're where most of the councils are.
Yes, I'd say we're where most councils are, with outstanding 2021-22 accounts to be audited, but having had our 2021 accounts audited already, if anything, we might be slightly better off than we're slightly better off than some. We're not as well off as just a very few, so we're definitely in the middle of the pack.
So thank you. So what we've really got has been a learning curve. For the best of intentions has been change, and now the sector is adjusting. So we should find, once we're on fair to say that, when we're on a level playing field again, once we've got this sorted out, I think if we look back on this in a few years' time, we will see that rhythm is back in there and it'll be on time. Yeah, thanks for that. Thank you. Anything? Yeah. Sorry, Mr. Councillor Gadsden.
I don't know who wants to answer this, but bearing in mind this has been an ongoing situation and we have our own internal auditor fraud. Is it just you, or have you got a department? I'm not sure. Have we put in steps to try to mitigate this, sort of looking at our accounts internally to make sure that they're being managed best we can, for fraud or any sort of, especially with the pension fund deficit? So are we highlighting individual books and keeping on top of it ourselves?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we have our own internal controls, and just because our accounts aren't audited externally doesn't mean that they're unsound. It just means that we can't prove that they are clean. It is rather galling because there have been partners, and Chair, you'll know this, from some past work that we were involved with. There have been partners of this council where I've been challenging them to say, why haven't you had your accounts audited? Should we be doing business with you? And actually, how does the council look when the boot's on the other foot? So that's frustrating, but nonetheless, we will do all that we can to ensure that we maintain the same standards that Rochford, as a councillor of Rochford, you'll have come to expect for the council. We do have internal audit, and we have a robust internal audit, and there is an internal audit team behind Mike. I hope there is, because we pay for one. And we also conduct additional work where we feel it is needed. For example, we requested an independent review of the decision regarding the development partnership from Elucidate, which is an independent firm, to provide that additional assurance around internal controls. So not just to rely upon our own professional expertise and systems and processes.
Thank you, Tim. I'd just like to say that sort of having been at other meetings and being reassured by our internal audit, I have sort of felt confident we've been keeping up on it. So it's pleased to hear that from you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Gedson. That's very good. One thing I should mention is where we've had a red, we're coming on to item 7 after this, but we should cover that, on risk assessments, where we've had a couple of issues which have been flagged up red, which you can see in there. Elucidate have been used on 2 issues, and there was the ADP program, and there's something else to do with IT strategic manager as well, because they were flagged red. So to pay attention to that, we got the specialists in to actually make sure everything's good in that area, because it has to be fair to everyone here, you know, and the residents, of course. Anyway, thank you. Okay, have we completed your report? Thank you very much. I mean, you're welcome to stay, but if you're no, it's good. Right. Well, we can move on to. The other thing is, are we noting this? Yeah. Is it noted? Yes, noted. Thank you. Item 7 is the risk management update, and I've got my notes here. It's on page 2, which has been introduced by Tim Willis.
Thank you, Chair. This report sets out the latest assessments, risk assessments, by the corporate leadership team regarding the council's strategic risks. The last report on risk management was in January. There are 2 very high risks, that of cyber threat and that the asset delivery programme partnership fails to bring about the project benefits. Cyber threat is a risk that is managed on an ongoing basis and has been very high for a while. The ADP, the Asset Delivery Programme partnership, is subject to ongoing work and subject also to commercial confidentiality. This ongoing work is taking some time before we can resolve the issue, and so we will then be able to demonstrate managing the risk. 2 risk scores have reduced. The risk of a failure to ensure the safeguarding of our children and adults in the district, and a serious health and safety incident for which the council is liable. These risks obviously make reference to very serious matters, but it's likely in future that these will be managed at a director level rather than by the corporate leadership team. So will be reviewed and potentially removed from the strategic risk register in future. A reminder to members that the strategic risk register relates to those risks which can't alone be managed by a director who doesn't have the sufficient power, resources or wherewithal to manage that risk. The likelihood of the risk and the mitigating the consequences of the risk becomes manifest. So it's escalated to the corporate leadership team who have that authority. Well, these 2 risk scores are becoming so low that they sort of be relegated from the Premier League of risks and be managed at the director level instead. But we will be reassessing that before it comes before this committee at its next meeting in the new municipal year. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Wilson. Thank you.
Thanks, Chairman. Tim, just out of curiosity, do we use a particular method to identify the likelihood and impact of the risks? In other words, is there something that sits behind the way that we do this?
Yes, thank you, Chair. There is an appendix which appears to be headed Appendix A in the report, which is actually Appendix B. It's referred to as Appendix B at the bottom of the narrative report, but it's the last page of the report in 7.9, which provides a matrix which explains how we would go about assessing the likelihood and impact and how we would score it, and then based on those scores, what it would mean as a consequence regarding different types of risks, the financial service, reputation, etc. So that's what we use, but I think it's fair to say that with these types of things, you're coming up with a score. You try and make it as analytical as possible and evidence-based to use so that you minimize the amount of subjectivity in the assessment. But inevitably, there is always subjectivity. And even if you do go about this and you say you come up with a very high risk as a consequence of going about this process, as we have, say, on cyber risk, whereas the rules of risk management would imply, well, you have to do something about that then to bring the risk down. Sometimes you can't do anything and you just have to live with the risk. You tolerate the risk, even though it's very high. So you try and make it as scientific as possible, but I wouldn't want to give the suggestion that it's purely scientific because there's always an element of subjectivity involved.
So I've got a question. So it would be fair to say that unlike a nuts and bolts risk assessment, whereas if building had a fire and then to get in there safely, you'd have to mitigate the risk by putting up scaffolding. That's a nuts and bolts thing. But in the financial world, of course, it's not that easy, or you can't actually cover that most of the time. But sometimes in risk assessment tables, you can have a column that says either what you're doing or what you could do to mitigate the risk, so we don't have a sort of problem out. It does actually say what those risks could result in this table, but you see what I mean by that wherever it's possible to do that. It's just a question. I know obviously it would incur extra work, and you wouldn't be able to put it in every column, would you? Or would you? I'm not sure.
One of the challenges of presenting and reporting on risk management is it can become very complicated. You can report all sorts of things. I've already been wondering whether for the new municipal year we rationalise the risk register that's included in these reports, because it's in such small print, what I'm looking at here, and it must be on hard copy as well, that it's almost impossible to see. So I think, even though a number of the columns are important, I think I might need to slash through it so that there's fewer columns, so it's bigger print. Maybe it will always be landscape, it won't be portrait, but at least you'll be able to see it a bit more clearly. And it's not to say you wouldn't ever you would not be able to see the stuff that I've removed. It's just that it would you'd have to look elsewhere if you did want to find that. I have also want to introduce plans to publish the risk register in its full state on the website and leave it there, so you see a story of risk registers and risks movement over time. And everyone can see that, the world can see it. And if we do that, we'll do it retrospectively, because this committee needs to note the reports before they get posted. But that then helps us not have to make reference to previous descriptions in such detail every time we report the risk, because it'll always be on the risk register. It will just mean that it's rationalised what we have to put in front of the committee in future.
Yeah, thank you. That leads me to my second question, so it'll be the last one. And that is, in another life, we created a route maps in form of an AI app. And what actually happened, we can do this with a spreadsheet just with some macros in it. So if you're looking at that, it's possible to put what you're doing next, which you couldn't include on the page, but you say what's happening, and if it's ongoing, you can put that in there, you can click on it, and if it's resolved, you could click on it, or what the options are, you could click on it. I don't know if that's going to put an albatross around the necks of people in your department, but I mean, I'm just looking at this idea of actually presenting that so that members and residents up to a point can look at what's openly sourced, as it were.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is a developing area in general for Oxford. I know under the shared service banner, we've got some expertise now in this area, in the digital area, which is going to help us do exactly that type of thing. So to take what is a relatively complex issue, but then to find a way to present it online so that it's easily understood and customers as well as members can extract the information they need in as simple as means as possible and with as few clicks as possible. I think that's always going to be a web tool. It could be something that if every member had their laptop in front of them here now, and they knew how to navigate and manipulate those things, it could be available as a real time aid to the deliberations of this committee. But I think we're some way from that yet. I think we'd start with the website and let customers use it and test it out to see if it was functioning, because I think it would help interrogate exactly where you want to get to, what you want to talk about, and see what we're doing about a particular risk.
Yeah, thanks for that, because as lay people, we sometimes need to sort of unravel things, and see our way through, because it's always difficult when we get specialists in and deal with that. Anyway, thanks very much. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Gadsden.
Sorry, Tim, going back to your comments about the asset delivery programme, and you've said that the council is reviewing the partnership. What I'm a little bit confused about is when you're talking about risks and delivering, what are you measuring? I haven't quite seen a business plan, so I'm wondering what you're measuring the risks against if we haven't got a business plan. And the second part of that is, if they're reviewing the partnership, when is that likely to conclude?
Thank you, Chair. The risks are assessed based on the information that the CLT, the corporate leadership team, receives from directors largely. And it's based on activity that is either currently being undertaken. Sometimes it's ongoing activity. I mean, the cyber threat one is around all the time,
I mean, that's
for
obvious,
example.
yeah.
But then some are related to projects that are in the pipeline, and the ADP is just such a program or project, or it was in the pipeline. I think it's morphing into something else now, based on the last executive meeting. But nonetheless, as part of the delivery of the ADP, we formed a partnership. And so given the redirection of the ADP, for example, Mill Hall being taken out of it is one thing, it's meant that we need to reassess whether or not that partnership is still going to aid the council in delivering its capital strategy objectives. There's a risk in doing that. And that's what this very high risk identifies. It recognises there's a risk in doing that. And for example, the things that we are doing is to try and manage the response to the partner if withdrawing from the partnership. And the council is reviewing its partnership as the only reference in this report to what future actions are is fairly brief, because it's subject to commercial confidentiality. So I am, and we can't really talk about it in public as to how that's going or what we're doing or what the end game might be.
Right. So basically from this, the only risk that I can understand at the moment is the risk of withdrawing from the partnership.
Yes, that's correct. The consequences of withdrawing from a partnership that was felt to be essential to deliver the council's capital strategy,
Yeah.
main plank of its capital strategy, that there are risks associated with doing so. They could be reputational, financial, strategic, i.e. not delivering on what we wanted to do in capital development terms, as well as a multiplicity of other issues around, well, you know, the ADP included moving offices. So if that partnership is being reviewed, as is the ADP, then whatever comes next, how we transitioning to whatever comes next, there is bound to be substantial risk associated with that. And we know there is risk, financial risk associated with that, because we've already made a course correction on the ADP, and that had a financial consequence.
So when are we likely to get that resolved? What sort of time frame?
I'd need to ask my colleague Phoebe Barnes about that, because
Okay.
she's the one leading the discussions. I can get back to you on that.
Yeah, thank you.
Right, thanks very much. Councillor Booth.
My questioning focuses around 7.2, paragraph 1.5, about the safeguarding issue of our children and vulnerable adults within the district. I mean, experience has taught me the safeguarding goes wrong where there isn't a current policy, where that policy hasn't been communicated, and training isn't current and up to date. It's stated there that there has been training for staff delivered in 2024. So can I just ask, do we know the impact of that training, or how are we measuring the impact of that training?
Thank you, Chair. I'll need to get back to you, Councillor, on that, because I don't know the answer.
Right, okay. And just wondering if, when it's with members, has there been any evaluation of the impact on members as well?
I would take that. I'd respond to that in conjunction with your first
Thank
question.
you.
It would apply to anyone that partook of the training, whether or not there was an assessment as to whether or not it was effective.
Right, okay. And then how often what's the procedure for reviewing policies within the district? Would safeguarding be an annual review, or once every 2 or 3 years?
So I don't know the answer
Right,
to that. I mean, this is a risk on a corporate risk register, which I think I've made reference to because the score's gone down.
Yeah.
The safeguarding strategy and plans around delivering the safeguarding strategy, I'd need to consult with my fellow director in relation to those, but I will do so, and either I or he, the interim, will get back to you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. One thing I would ask, I mean, O&S seems to be the area that would look at reviewing issues sort of annually. It's one of those built-in things that get reviewed annually. Overview and scrutiny could look at that and maintain a view of it. I mean, that's probably done already. I'm not exactly sure. I can't remember. So we could check on that. Yeah, that's one issue. We could deal with that and keep a watch on it. I quite agree with that. Thank you. Councillor Linden.
Councillor Gadsden's asked my questions already for me, so I just want to, Tim, if you can make sure we're all copied into the Phoebe Barnes response regarding the time, please, would be appreciated.
Yes, Chair, I'll do that.
Right, thanks very much. Now, Councillor Mrs. Wilson. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Booth has stolen my thunder yet again with my question. However, this is a bad habit he's developed. However, can I just ask, how often is this risk register reviewed in its entirety? Is it annually? Is it 6 monthly? How's that worked out? And interestingly, yes, my question was about risk to safeguarding, but as I say, that part's been answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Formally, quarterly. It's reviewed quarterly. So the corporate leadership team receives the latest risk register in draft form from the risk and insurance officer who works for me, and she asked for everyone to update it because different directors have different leads. Then they update it, and then we talk about it at corporate leadership team, and then I, with the risk insurance officer, finalise the covering report and finalise the risk register, and then it comes before the committee, and all of that happens quarterly. In addition to that, the risk and insurance officer will constantly be reviewing risks that she becomes aware of, which may be missed by a director, but she's the fail safe to make sure that anything is picked up. Sometimes that will be from a project or from a source that isn't, like a service that isn't a director, that the director hasn't picked up, and can flag it with me to say, do you think we should be thinking about having a discussion around this at CLT to put it on the strategic risk register? I actually had one that I was discussing with the chief executive just last week, beginning of this week, because I think there'll be an additional risk on the next risk register, which will be along the lines of the capacity of finance, because the risk of to the council of not having a fully functioning finance team is significant in terms of financial control and good financial management. And we are at a stage now where there are a number of vacancies. There's of the whole finance team, there are 24 posts in both councils. This is because we're moving to a shared model. There's 10 vacancies out of 24. And I'm obviously interim, and one of the two deputies is vacant, and we failed to appoint to that post just recently. And there are a number of other vacancies in the team, and we're going through a restructuring of the finance team itself to bring it all together under one banner. So that, to me, presents with external audits to support for 21-22, as well as the final accounts to complete for 23-24. So I think there's a lot on at the moment in finance, and it prompted me to have that discussion with the chief exec. He agrees, and I've put that on already to the draft next quarter's risk register, and told Sue, my risk and insurance officer, to say, I put this on, it's going to be on both councils, Brentwood and Rochford, because it applies equally to both. We just need to work out what mitigations we can put in place to try and manage that situation. But I think I didn't want to put it on the table just for sort of parochial reasons that I've got a problem, so it must be a corporate problem. But I think it is of such significance that it needs to go on there. We've tried 3 times and failed to recruit to the post I'm covering for, and we're trying for a 4th time after Easter. That's a risk in itself as well. So you'll be seeing that if you're on this committee at the next risk register report in the new municipal year.
Councillor, sorry.
May I come back, Chair? Is that okay?
Yes.
I'd just like to say, Tim, thank you very much. That was an excellent example. Bit hair raising, to be entirely honest, and thank you for all the work you're doing, because I know you're doing lots. Thank you.
Councillor Mrs. Gaddison.
Tim, our recruitment problems, is that unique to us, or is that throughout councils?
There's a common problem in a number of professions, probably in local government, to recruit good people. It's true of lawyers, planners, and accountants. I think there's a particular problem right now in finance in Brentwood and Rochford, and I think it's just sort of happenstance. It's not necessarily there's something peculiarly unattractive to Brentwood and Rochford. I would say, though, that for the Section 151 officer, I know, because I'm talking to people and trying to persuade them what a great job this is and they should come and do it. Doing 2 councils is tough.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
And when you've got a Section 151 officer or a deputy who's doing 1 council and maybe thinking of a move or a step up, and they've got options of moving to 1 council or trying to do 2, why would you choose 2? And part of that is how we can sell that as a challenge, and it's exciting and interesting, and it is all of those things. But it's very demanding when we don't share a border, and I was just saying to Vicky, we're 45 minutes apart realistically, the offices, and there's double the number of evening meetings, double the number of accounts, double the number of budgets. There's no rationalisation in finance of a shared service. So I think that places a lot of demands, given the backdrop of the severe constraints that local government finance works under anyway, and the exiting of a lot of people from the market who might otherwise have been available on the supply side, people like me, exiting. Then I think for a variety of reasons, I think that makes things really, really difficult to recruit good people, because we won't recruit if we can't recruit good people.
Do we offer an attractive enough package to compensate some of that?
But this is probably encroaching upon the discussion that we'll be having at the next audit committee, because of placing this on the risk register. It's a really good example because it's one close to my heart, but I'll get it on the corporate risk register, so it's escalated. So corporate leadership team need to do something about it, and I will be saying, okay, what we need to do is recognise that, for example, we're supposed to produce draft accounts at the end of May, so the draft 23/4 accounts by the end of May 24. I'm already thinking, well, one mitigation is we won't try and do that. The 23/3 accounts aren't being audited. We will be focusing on 23/4, but if we're a month late, so be it, because something has to give. Potentially, we wouldn't want to do that, but that could be a mitigation. Paying honorariums to staff who have been offered another job to persuade them to stay, paying supplements to potential new recruits to persuade them to come to work for us. Those are the sort of things that we need to put on the table. Nobody likes doing that. Nobody likes doing that, but you've got to work in the real world, and money isn't the only motivator, but it is a motivator. And so those are the sort of mitigations I've already drafted to say these are the sort of things I want to put on the risk register to say what we're planning to do about it. But I can't do that until CLT have had the discussion and we've collectively approved that we're willing to do that. And actually, I suspect when we do have that discussion at CLT, we'll have the Director of Planning saying, actually, I've got the same problem. And then the Director of Law saying, actually, I've got the same problem. And then it might be that we have a corporate policy around some of these issues as well.
One of the issues that I can see is that it's an answer or some way to help answering the problem. But if you then have all the directorates in the same problem, then it starts eating away at the savings that you're making in the partnership. So it is obviously a discussion really needs to be had pretty soon and quite seriously about this.
Thank you, Chair. That's true. I'm an advocate of shared services, and one of the reasons is if you have to recruit somebody who's in possession of rare skills and experience and valuable skills and experience, and that's true of modesty aside, the job I do, but it's also true of a number of other jobs in finance that require quite specialist knowledge. If you think of Brentwood and Rochford, you've got to have one each of all of those things. If you've got a shared service, you only need one in a lot of instances. We've done that with Treasury Management. We haven't really got a post in Rochford. Carrie does it all. She runs the finance service and she's a Treasury Manager, which isn't sustainable going forward. So what we're coming up with under the new structure is one Treasury Manager at quite a senior level, just below Carrie, and then an assistant, and they will take care of Treasury management for both councils, because there's not many people in this world that understand Treasury management in local government finance, and things like collection fund as well, and pensions accounting and those type of specialist things. So I think there are true benefits of having a shared service model in a number of instances, because at least you've got a better chance of creating some resilience to a service. And I'd hate for anyone to think that because we've been going through one team and now we've got lots of recruitment and retention problems, the two are related. I actually think one team has helped mitigate some of that. It could have been even worse if it hadn't been for that.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Tim. That's a very full answer.
Yeah, very good.
Very good. Councillor Mrs. Page.
hello through the chair. I think this is to you, Tim. 7.2, 1.5, risk 2. You're saying in here, training for members has already been undertaken. This is safeguarding training. Please, can you, maybe you're not going to be able to answer this evening, go away and find that evidence for me, because I'm only aware of one very short 20-minute signposting exercise around safeguarding, which is poorly, very inadequate for us councillors to protect ourselves around all of this and the impact on us around it. So could we get that review, please?
Yes, I'll get back to you, Councillor. Do you know when that was, that training that you're referring to?
I think we're going back to September,
September,
I think it was, because I have brought it up many times since that it's inadequate what we've been given. And I think that's been covered on other committees, but obviously because it's written in here, I think we need to cover ourselves this evening. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Mr. Linden.
The Chair, Tim, I'd like to answer that. We have done a lot of work through the standards on training, and that is something which I have brought to the fore very strongly regarding safeguarding training for members, and hopefully through your teams it will be coming up in the near future.
Councillor Mrs. Gadsden. Sorry.
Tim, on page 7.5, at the bottom it says, third paragraph, it says a review of reserves brought forward in light of 2022-23 outturn, as well as budget 23-24 budget position, will inform the ability to resource any change in corporate priorities in light of change of administration. It says no new corporate priorities approved, but do I take that to mean if there was corporate priorities that we wouldn't have the reserves and resources to do it? Or am I misunderstanding that?
Through you, Chair. Which box are you referring
So
to?
7.5, sorry, I could see the number, risk 9 at the bottom there, sorry. Yeah. So it starts with a review of the reserves brought. So what I'm trying to understand is that report saying that there isn't the reserves or the resources? I know there's no corporate priorities approved, but if there was new corporate priorities, do we have the reserves to do that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. What that was attempting to, I think, anticipate at the time of September when that was written, because it was a further planned action when this was reviewed in September. It was suggesting that we're going to have new corporate priorities, so that's going to help us with the medium-term financial strategy and what we do about reserves, whether there are reserves that we need to what we would have previously earmarked them for one thing, actually we need to earmark them for something else because priorities have changed, for example.
Right.
But there are still no new corporate priorities approved, so that's going to be a new municipal year issue now, I think. So that's meant, and which is why it says that they haven't been approved consequently. That doesn't mean to say that reserves have been removed or withdrawn. They're still sitting there. It's just that they may not be sitting in a place that the new council would want them to sit. And so that's something that the new council might want to review when they come to consider where earmarked reserves are being held.
Thanks, Tim. I think what I was confused about was a review of reserves. I was trying to just clarify in my mind whether it was the level reserves is set at a level that it's nothing to do with the review of the level of reserves that we'll have for that year.
No,
that's fine. Thank you. That's the bit I wasn't sure about. Thank you.
Okay. If there's no further questions, I believe we were asked to note the report. Is that report noted? Noted. Thank you very much. We can now move on to item 8, which is in the hands of Mike Porter, our audit and counter fraud manager, who's going to present the report. And it has a recommendation in this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm presenting the audit plan for 2024-25. The audit plan itself is essentially a programme of work for the forthcoming year. So the audit plan sets out the audits we're going to undertake in the forthcoming year. And Appendix A at 8.5 sets out the audits that we're going to undertake with a brief outline in terms of the work we're going to undertake. We do actually work up a full terms of reference with the audit client prior to starting the audit. So this is just a brief outline of initial thoughts in terms of what the work we're going to undertake. The audit plan itself or the work programme essentially enables me to provide an annual audit opinion for the financial year. So I'm required to provide an opinion on the council's arrangements for risk management, governance and internal control. So all this work has the purpose of enabling me to provide an opinion on the council's arrangements. One of the questions I've been asked in the past around the audit plan is the issue of resourcing. Do I have the resources to deliver the audit plan? And picking up what Tim said earlier is attracting good staff, internal auditors, is more difficult than attracting finance staff. We are unique. And it's very difficult to attract internal auditors and for reasons I don't understand. I mean, it's a great job. It's very enjoyable. And I've been in the profession for about 35 years, so it can't be that bad. So what we have undertaken, we've been out to tender and we've procured a delivery partner, which I think we spoke about, is Elucidate. So they will also be our delivery partner for the next 3 years. So if we run into any problems in terms of I might lose staff or resourcing issues, I can call upon Elucidate to support me in delivering your audit plan. So there shouldn't be any problems with delivering the audit plan. The benefit of a delivery partner such as Elucidate, they have a skill set that we don't have in my team. They actually undertake IT audits. So they have a team of IT auditors, and that's even a more skill set than me. So basically trying to find an IT auditor is nearly impossible. So they have a team of IT auditors that will support me in delivering your audit plan. So that enables me to produce a wide scoping audit plan for the year, which includes IT audits, because I can call upon Elucidate to undertake such audits. I'm quite happy to take any questions in relation to the audit plan.
I was going to ask a question, but was I first?
I've just got a really quick question. Do we, and not relating to that, but sort of connected, do we have some sort of apprenticeship schemes where you can bring people on?
We don't currently have any trainee auditors in my team. We are looking to attract people from outside internal audit, from finance. So people have expressed an interest in working internal audit. And in June, a member of staff will be coming across from finance at Basildon to basically have a go at internal audit, should I say? So she's expressed an interest in working in internal audit. So we're going to facilitate that, and hopefully she will come on board and join the team if she likes internal audit. And why wouldn't she? To be fair. So yeah, we don't have a training program as such. And with such a small team, taking on trainees is very resource intensive.
Okay.
So trying to deliver audits as well as taking on trainees is somewhat difficult. If you've got a large audit team, when I first started back in about, I don't know, 2000 something, we had about 34 auditors at Essex County Council, and you could facilitate trainee auditors. But when you've got a team of 5 or 6 and you're looking to progress audits, get on and deliver the audit plan, it's somewhat difficult where you've got to spend a few months training someone up. But that said, we will be looking at a trainee in June to come across from finance, and hopefully, you know, we can support her ambitions to be an internal auditor.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. We've now got Councillor Mrs. Page.
Thank you, Chair. Mike, it's a question for you. I'm reading here on 8.5, you've said non-plan 24-25, safeguarding was reviewed in 2020-21, assessed as good, and obviously I've identified that there's an issue here. So will we put a little amendment in here for this to get looked at, please?
I'm not proposing to undertake an audit of safeguarding as such, but if it's some concerns you might have, and in speaking to Tim in terms of actually when he comes back to you
Yeah.
in different, if there's any additional issues or concerns you might have, then we can of course undertake specific pieces of work if there are still some underlying issues or concerns you may have.
Yeah.
So once you've had feedback from Tim, if that doesn't address your concerns, then there's something we can look into.
Okay, we can work together on that then, yeah? In conjunction with what's happening in the other committees as well.
Yes, I'll find out what my colleagues say about this issue, so I can answer the questions that have been raised.
Brilliant.
I'd agree with the chair that it sounds. I don't know what the answers will be yet, but it sounds like it might be more like a scrutiny issue than an audit issue. But I'm happy to be corrected once we identify what the weaknesses might be.
As long as we're putting a spotlight on it, then I'm quite happy. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Mrs. Wilson and then Councillor Linden. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not too sure who this question will go to. So, Chair, if I can ask you and you can fill it out, is that okay? Just like to start to say that, Mike, I'm really pleased that Elucidator coming to work. So at least then that will help keep this our internal audit plan on track, which is good. When you said that, it reminded me that this council had put out an ad for an independent member for this committee. Is there any update on that, please?
Yes, there is, and I can hand that to Tim Willis. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The Chair and I interviewed and offered the independent person role to Janine Hoax, who is going to be the independent person. She accepted, and I've taken up references which were all very good, and she signed a declaration of interest and the Nolan principle statement. So she's done everything that needs to be done, and I'm ready because I've got delegated authority from council to make the appointment effectively, having consulted with the members of this committee, the chair and vice chair. So she will be starting in the next meeting. There was a possibility she could have squeezed into this one, but it felt actually better if it literally would have been squeezed in this room. But also it sort of felt right to be the new municipal year, first meeting in the new municipal year. She's already independent person at Audit and Risk Committee of Chelmsford City, so that will help.
She has got experience in this sort of area in her professional life, which is really an advantage. Right.
She's an auditor by profession.
Did we not offer her? Did we not offer her a position full time?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Tim. Who else have we got? Councillor Mr. Linden. Thank you.
Through the chair again, Tim, to save you time, if you actually speak to Matthew Stickley, I've been doing a lot of work through the standards working group on training, and he very much is handling the safeguarding issues, not just for the external, but also for the members. So if you would like to go direct to him, he should be able to give you an update straight away.
Thank you, Councillor. I was just searching for my email from Matthew because he circulates everything around to colleagues about a draft training and induction plan for all new members, and I wanted to be able to say he's already on the case and he's going to be doing X, Y, Z, but I couldn't find the emails. But I will be doing that.
He is already on the case, and that is one of his priorities.
Thank you. One question for Mike from me. Obviously, we've got a balanced budget, and we're going to be pursuing that. And as it unfolds, we're monitoring it because we're interested in one of our main objectives, of course, is financial sustainability. Because we've always got that in every document, that range there. So we'll be keeping tabs on that, and we've got obviously a process for that because that can affect decision making with resources and so on, just to keep everything nicely on track. So what was your view on that? Sort of monitoring of that.
I think for the most part, I would hope my colleagues from Ernst & Young would pick something out like that in terms of their value for money opinion. So obviously we have a view to financial sustainability. Sorry.
No, sorry.
No, that's okay, really. I don't know. I don't know what's causing that. Obviously, we have a view to financial sustainability and value for money in undertaking audits, but obviously, E&Y would be the experts and provide an opinion on value for money in terms of the resources used by the council. Not particularly my area of expertise or something we look at in terms of internal audit, but we would rely on assurances provided by other partners, including E&Y.
So we'd get feedback and advice as we go through your office sort of thing, or rather the accounting office.
Yeah, should I answer that, Chair? Yeah, so as part of our value for money work, so we look on the financial resilience of the council. So it's part of our BFM, and we will comment on that on our auditor's annual report when it's.
So we're all nice and accountable. Thank you very much. Thank you. Any other questions, members? There is a recommendation in this report. I'll just go and find it. Where are we going? Right. Oh, yes. That the Audit Committee endorses the Internal Audit Plan 2024-25 as set out in Exclosure 1. So we need someone to propose as Councillor Page and seconded by Councillor Mr. Wilson. Thank you. Members, do we endorse the Internal Audit Plan? Yes. Looks like unanimous, that's handy. Thanks very much. And that, I think, brings us to the end of the meeting at 8:32, roughly. And thank you all for your input tonight. It's been very good, actually. Thanks.